Coming off the heels of watching our first live action of football, and I told Donnie last night we were kind of watching it together, living vicariously through each other, and I told him, you know what, I miss football, but I think I missed it more so because of the UFL, which sounds weird because I'm not saying oh, I miss football, I'm glad it's back, like it's been so long. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what my Thursdays or my Saturdays and Sundays have looked like. And now, yes, of course, I'm seeing the better version of it, the more professional, more polished version of the NFL. But it did make me just appreciate football again. And I got to be honest, the UFL was better than that preseason game. So, if there is any solace to that, I did enjoy the UFL better. So I do think the product is improving in the UFL when we can now compare it to preseason.
Apples to oranges, though, Logan.
True, but I'm saying I actually enjoy the UFL better, and before I couldn't have said that.
Truly. Well, I mean, the UFL regular season had the top starters trying their best, whereas these last night's preseason game is backups vying for specific positions with a limited playbook and timeshares, just depending on what coaches wanted to see. So that's why I said apples to oranges.
Yeah, it's true. I'm really happy where the game is, and we might actually, speaking of different football, we might actually get it in the Olympics. We'll have to see about that. That's just a poignant little sidebar because they are talking about that now. So we might be covering Olympic football here in a couple of years. But with that being said, Gov, you wanted to kick off with the skill positions tonight. We were going to kind of tier off these DraftKings salaries because we don't really know who's the best value, who's the best play at this point. But we can talk about these price points and kind of talk about the skill players.
We can infer that stuff. There's always clear misprices on the week one, just because they bring them out a month ahead of time.
Correct.
We might not know them all now because the preseason is just happening, but preseason game one, who didn't play? Those guys are guaranteed starters.
Mm-hmm.
All right, some teams you didn't know who those guys would be, but as we see some preseason games, those will come to light. But there's always even when it's really tight at the end of the year, there's misprices that you can just see. It seems easier because it's oh, we've had this whole year. We know how teams play and this. But, I know how Brandon Ayuk plays after watching him for 3 or 4 years. I know what I expect from DeAndre Swift in multiple different systems. I can infer some stuff. I know the Dallas Cowboys are the Dallas Cowboys and what I can get from Dak. So, just seeing that, we can definitely infer some things.
Do you think you infer too much, though, at this point? Because that's kind of the give and take that I sometimes have. It's I'm gearing up for another DFS, NFL season. I'm gearing up for their basically Super Bowl moment. Week one is kind of the big, that's when the promotions are the highest. That's when excitement's the highest. Sometimes I feel I might read into it too much at this point.
That could happen. Now, for me, I'm kind of trying to, how do I put it? My goal this month is to kind of looking at DK at least, is to expand what my normal process would be that I have to do in 1 week for every slate. And now I have a month to do it where I get to look at it and analyze the value and fact check statistics in that. So the stuff that I'm going to need to be this month, I'm taking it slow, remembering websites, learning new ones that have new stats in that. Fantasy Pros is always good. I've always loved NFL Savant. There's always been good sites that you can get. If you pay for PFF, that's always really good. There's always good places to get the info. It's just I'm sort of it's almost every year I need to relearn or switch from sport to sport, which is really hard for me because I only have 6-7 weeks once the season starts, and then I got to start doing the same thing for NBA.
I'm one of the weird guys too that actually I like the grind, the days in between the football games. I like them just as much. I love the review shows. I love the why did you play this guy over this guy? Why are you on this guy? Why is this guy getting all the attention?
And then right now, what my goal is to expand that thought and maybe refine it when I have time to actually focus on one thing. Like normally during a week, I might only have a day or two to focus on what stacks I want and then trying to find some value one-offs or whatever in the right games. I have a whole month to look at week 1 and figure out what the games are and that I want to attack. And so like I can put more research into it, which might help me into looking at where the right places to look in week 1. So I'm quicker at it and I am able to get more info. But like that's my goal right now. I'm not taking anything in. Like everything's kind of like at a high altitude. I'm looking at everything and I'm taking my time with it. But I am trying to apply the same process at a slower rate than I normally would. But doing that, like we sort of started that last week. We look at quarterbacks. Who seems to be mispriced based off of the offensive talent that we can either reasonably expect or project? And like we came up with a few, like Dak seemed to be mispriced. Who else was it? I think Trevor Lawrence at Miami. Like that should be a high scoring game. He probably shouldn't be low 6K. A lot of quarterbacks are sub 6K that are actually solid. Like Daniel should start. Baker's going to be there. Geno's going to be there. Like either one of the Vegas versus the Chargers. Chargers were horrible against the pass last year. Like one of the worst teams defending the pass most of the year. I would be willing to take a shot on O'Connell or Minshew with Devontae Adams, like as having a solid day. Like
they have not gotten better at corner.
Exactly. Like so, like there's misprices that we can see already. There's value at quarterback. So today we can probably like start with the stacks, like actually thinking about it, like extrapolating. Like I like Dak, but even Dak at 7,100, knowing I'm probably got to play the highest priced $8,900 CD Lamb with him.
That's exactly where I was going to lead you down.
That's where you got to look at it. Like I think Dak is underpriced, but I'm not sure the stack is underpriced considering where CD is.
And that's what I mean by sometimes I think I'm being too advanced or maybe thinking about things too clouded in this idea of stacks, but that's how I just think. So when I think of Dak, I'm like, well, CD's the highest priced skill position. So I automatically just calculate the two together. Because for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I would not play Dak without CD.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm playing Dak, I probably have CD. I don't see going Dak and then one-offing Ferguson with it.
See, this is interesting though. Evan. It doesn't sound like you're convinced.
Maybe not like if Dak has a ceiling, he's throwing multiple touchdowns.
Unless I think Ferg just goes up.
I don't think like again week 1. I'm not betting on Ferg like having all the touchdowns and CD just having like 10 catches for 120 yards. Where like he still has 20 points, but at 8,900, there's probably better value. But realistically, if Dak has like a 30-point day and throws for 2 or 3 touchdowns, Lamb probably has that 10 for 120, 130 and a touchdown. Now he has 30 points himself and is probably one of the highest scoring wide receivers on the slate. So I would love to correlate all that.
Us as a group when we're building lineups, though, just in general, I brought up the Ferguson to Dak Prescott stack. How often are our group lineups even willing to spend on tight end, though? Because it seems like we like to punt at that position.
Exactly. Like that's more like a throwaway stack spot too. So like just roster construction wise, I don't immediately go to Ferg. Now, this is where like, okay, we can deep dive Dak in that. Let's say week 1, how much ownership do we actually think on CD? Like if CD's low owned and no one's playing Dak, then I might be able to stack it the way I want. If CD's already highly owned, but no one's playing Dak because CD's just the highest floor guy and he's projecting well. And just like CMC, even though he's expensive, you try to jam him in. And a lot of optimizers and people will do that. Well, he might still come in highly owned. Now maybe a Dak Ferg stack and you get the rest of the offense. Like that could be a low owned way to attack it. But week 1, I usually don't try to attack things that way. Week 1, teams try to play their ball game. And Dallas's ball game is probably going to be run the ball and let CeeDee Lamb and Dak do everything like they did last year, and just let Dak roll.
Let me get Donnie in here because I actually have an interesting question. This week one has the most time. You can parse through the lineup, so you could say, well, that's the time for the analytics or the advanced stat guys to really go crazy and like overthink things. But I also think it's the most casual week of all. So like, if you were just thinking in the mindset of a casual, do you think people are just going to be like, oh, let me play? Let me just play the top 5 at every position. Or are they going to do that, or are they going to really try to deep dive?
I'd be shocked if people just played. If you could fit a lineup where that's even possible, to be honest. I don't know if that's possible, Logan, to play a top 5 guy at every position.
I don't know. I don't even know if it is either, but I'm saying that's what like the casuals think. Like just that mindset of like, let me get as many good guys as I can, and then they'll punt at like one off position.
Right.
Do you think you need to leverage that in week one? Like, how do you leverage against the casuals? I guess is what I'm asking.
I really am not looking to leverage against casuals.
I mean, okay, so I can literally, as I'm showing, you can literally plug in the top dude at each position, one-offing it. Oh, well, not even one-off, just one-off, yeah. Allen, Taylor, Lamb, McBride. So the top wide receiver, top tight end, top running back, top quarterback. Min-price defense. Mm-hmm. You have enough money to, like, feasibly do what you want to do. You're building like stars and scrubs, but week one, it is entirely possible to build a lineup with the top guys at every position.
I'm curious
at least one or two of them. So I could still probably jam in a Bijan or an Etienne or maybe even a Tyreek or a Jefferson into this lineup and still have like $3K a guy to fit stuff. You'll need min-price guys, but you can do it. That's the beauty of week one. It is a softer week where you can get a lot of studs into your lineup.
Yeah, I have to agree with Donnie, though. I don't think this is a game where you have to care about getting leverage against the casuals. You just build the best lineup you can and hope for the best with a reasonably spent amount of money, even if you have to leave $800 on the table or whatever you think is best based on the week one.
And sometimes that's all you need to get different. I don't mind what everyone's playing. I'm leaving a little bit of money on the table. People are probably going to tweak that off.
Yeah.
And try to spend it.
This might be the first time someone's watching our stream for the first time. They're just looking for DFS content. They're like, hey, these guys are talking about week one. So, like, what's some advice you would give to someone week one if they haven't had a whole lot of NFL experience? Say that they know the NFL, but they haven't really tried DFS. Like, how is week one? What would you tell them to do?
Honestly, I think week one's probably the most interesting when it comes to fantasy-wise because I always feel it's such a high-scoring fantasy time in September.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think for me personally, Tyreek Hill's a lock for the first month, at least every game until he has his blow-up game that he's had. I will look back at the data and confirm this. I think it's been 4 years straight where he's had a 200-yard game in September. I don't think that's an anomaly.
Yeah. See, and like that's the kind of thing like you can do your research on the month and try to find your trends you want to attack week one because we don't really have data on how the team wants to play this year, but we know how the team is constructed from last year. We know where it was bad last year and whether it got better or worse at it, and so like we can figure out how to attack. And we know the kinds of trends like Tyreek. Like we know Tyreek is really good early in the season. It always has, and has had one big game early on in the season.
At least.
Is that are we saying that's going to happen? No. No one's saying that that's absolutely going to happen. But I know me and Donnie are both going to be looking for it to happen and probably having a high amount of Tyreek Hill in our lineups during these first month.
Which probably leads to more.
And it might not be after like week one. He might have 11 for 200 and 2 touchdowns. And then, okay, he's had his big game. I'm not going to be so inclined to just want to change.
Right. I'm not jamming a 40% Tyreek.
That thought's not a process I would say to give to people. Like,
so there's like
if you're just a first time or a casual, like I want to make you a better player. So I would be saying stuff like, remember that tight ends don't score as much. And unless you're paying the premium for the tight end you want, who's expensive, it's also entirely viable to just play an extremely cheap guy and hope you don't take a 0.
That's a very valid
Play
point.
a guy you believe will not take a 0, but might not be Trey McBride or Sam Laporta, and just destroy, or who's on the app, Trey McBride or Dalton Kincaid or Njoku. Like maybe you want to pay up for one of those 5K, 6K guys, but it's entirely possible to just play Mike Gesicki and hope that he does well. To play Kyle Granson, like actually Granson might not be bad because like Indy always uses their tight ends because with their power run game.
Well, there's
like
two.
I don't have one right off the top of my head after seeing it. Hopefully, training camp will enlighten us to a value tight end that's playing.
I got two of them,
but like there's a couple like you can play near this min price and all of that.
There's Sanders from your Panthers. There's who's the young kid from the Commanders? Looks like he'll get the start, and they're basically
yeah. So like there's a few, and like it's entirely possible just to punt at tight end. The way we say you punt at the position. I like punting at running back because usually there's one or two good running backs, and if they're too expensive, there's plenty of wide receivers that outscore or get close. And it's just easier to build with like the premium positions outside of quarterback. I usually try to like just find the value. Give me a value running back. Give me a value tight end. Give me a value defense. And then let me put my money in high ceiling quarterbacks and wide receiver stacks. That's just my personal strategy. Again, that might not be something that works every week or that everyone wants to do. But that would be what I would tell everyone for week 1, because I've seen it be a solid strategy throughout my time playing DFS.
I think you made a really good point, especially in week 1 about not taking a 0, because there's going to be so much value littered across DK lineups. If you're willing to do the work, you'll find values or your perceived value anywhere you want, any position. You can. This week is very unique in that way. So it's more important, I think, than any other week not to take a 0, because in week like 5 or 6, we'll have a lot more data to parse through. We'll have like target shares, and we'll be like, oh, this quarterback favors this wide receiver. This was really his number 1. Adams is still getting 10 targets. Okay, I can trust that. Christian McCaffrey's still seeing 6 to 7, receptions. I don't got to guess that's happening. It's still happening. Like, those things will start to parse themselves out with data. But week 1, that's where you get to like trust your gut more. But you almost can't do something too silly. Like, don't just go totally homer. Totally, I'm going to listen to the beat reporters. I like this guy. He's so outside the weeds that no one will think of him. Don't try to get the guy that's owned by one person in a contest. That's the wrong way to look at it. Evan, you were about to say something?
I didn't have anything necessarily to add on that point. I'm probably the worst person to give week 1 DFS advice, being a dynasty guy.
True, but you did play with us last year. Like, is there anything you gleaned from the season itself that you could give as advice? These are new players coming in. You were a new player last year.
No.
Yeah, I actually think
I got nothing.
But I think that's actually valuable. Like, sometimes I do think people they seek out advice and they're like, well, who can tell me like the one strategy that's going to work? Or like the casual will be like, tell me how I can win this contest. And sometimes that's just not the way. Is there like one thing that you think casuals will glom onto, and anyone can take this, like a strategy or something that will be overpopulated in terms of advice that you think is wrong?
I think you brought up an interesting point, though, with the casual type of simplified question of how do I win X contest, where that shouldn't necessarily be your goal from a face value standpoint, because there's no one right way to do it. Because ultimately DFS is a guessing game with a limited budget in the DraftKings platform. You get $50,000 to spend for a lineup on a weekly basis, and you plug in a select combination of guys based on those salary figures, and you hope for the best. You could choose to punt at tight end like this group here tends to do, or maybe you don't give a shit about running backs and you just pay for the cheapest ones. That's all you're doing. You're going off of what you think you know and hoping for the best.
Yeah, truthfully, yeah, like that's really the key. Like if you're really coming in there, just you want to play, you have a reason to play. Use your knowledge, play your players. Like I don't like giving people plays. Everyone can make their own plays based off their own knowledge. Right. Find your value. You think this guy is really good, he's probably mispriced in your head.
By the way, I did find that Tyreek Hill data that I was talking about. You have to go back to 2020, the last time Tyreek Hill did not have a 200-yard game in the first 2 weeks of the season. And in 2020, when that happened, he did have almost a 300-yard game. So,
Johnny, it was perfect timing because that's exactly what Gov's talking about here. He's not. Don't try to define like, oh, this is why you have to play Hill. Just give me your reasons why you're doing it. And I mean,
to say it's the first 2 weeks of the season as well when that's happening. And then as soon as that happened, Tyreek Hill's ownership will jump to 60% the next week.
Right. Well, like how many times did I try to convince the group here that Jameson Williams was a good play and you just hated it? It wasn't that like I was right and you were wrong and we could parse through weeks. It was you had your reasons for not wanting to play him and they were valid, and I had my upside reasons for wanting to play him and they were valid. If people did that more, I think we would build smarter lineups, and that's kind of what I did this offseason. You guys probably know this now, but we're all in the Discord channel. So my idea is we'll see how it goes. Instead of revealing our big pillar ideas on the show, I mean, it will still be a reveal for you guys, but each week I'm basically going to give these guys a sandbox channel in the Discord just to basically put any bulletin board material, any pricing, anything they want to kind of play with in their minds. And then we'll open up that channel each week on the show just to see what's in there. It might be Gov posting that he likes the Panthers this week, or don't play the Panthers this week for this reason. But this way, you guys kind of see our mindset from a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday perspective and see how it changes. Because I do think that's important. A lot of people think like, oh, you just open up DK and build a lineup. I don't think people build good lineups in 20 minutes. I'll just say that. So
let me go back to your first point though, Logan, where you brought up the Jameson Williams example. I get why you do it because, well, one, you believe in the play because you know how talented he is, and I agree he's talented. But two, your style is more get somebody who's cheap like a Jameson Williams to open up the other possibility of playing somebody more expensive, which I don't agree with that particular approach, which kind of falls in line with punting at a certain position slot. I don't like going too cheap at somebody where I'm risking taking like 3 or 4 fantasy points just because you think you're going to make it up with like 20 with somebody else. I don't like that risk.
Which is also why I love having this group together, because I think we're all skilled in different ways. Like it's almost like we bring different tools to a garden and then we kind of hoe the garden, we kind of cultivate it, and it ultimately comes out as a lineup, and it's a combination of all of our opinions in one. It's just a fun little thought exercise for me. So I really do enjoy it. But you are right. We're never going to agree 1 through 5 on a lineup,
And we shouldn't all have the same philosophy anyway.
Exactly. Like that's one of the reasons I think we build good lineups. Like we build it in our snake draft style so that we all get our own opinion in a single lineup. Which makes us, one, be different while still playing the better plays, because there's a lot of times we agree on players, and it's like, oh, I would have picked him too if he wouldn't have picked him. Ah, you took my value play. Ah. Like sometimes we are like that.
But we've had weeks where, like, let's just say Gov had a good value, and I'm like, well, the rest of this lineup just didn't work out. I picked the wrong guy. Donnie picked the wrong guy, but you know what? This one pick that Gov had worked out. I wonder if his personal lineups are doing well. So I'll still watch that one player to see how he does. So I'm like, Gov probably has him in other personal lineups as well. So like, there's lots of reasons it gives me another reason to cheer for things. It gives me another purpose to care about it, and that's all I really want to do with my sports, anyways. I watch the game for the physicality of it, but all the other reasons that brought me to that physicality, the emotion, like If we win, what can you do with the money? Does this change your life? Does this make it more fun? All those reasons matter to me. So when you guys talk about skill, we'll talk about skill players now. Like when you guys start looking at the skill players, like what are you targeting? Are you saying like I just want the best pass catcher? Are you saying like it needs to be a wide receiver? Like I want to go.
I usually don't care about like with my process. Like I usually just try to go through it, kind of how we did. Like I'm going to look at the quarterbacks first and see if there's a misprice. But like you said, I'm going to think about it as in a primary stack. So like when I think of Dak, I look at where CD is to think of the stack. So like doing stuff like that, like just talking through my head, like Dak is going to be. I think Dak is underpriced, but the stack is probably where it should be because it'll be the most expensive to have. I think the one that like I think people might gravitate to is probably the Houston stack, just because people are probably going to be willing to pay down the 300 for Diggs instead of Nico and call that as the primary stack, which makes it a little more manageable. It's also one of the only stacks that has a double premium wide receiver where it's like, well, you could just play Nico and Diggs and Stroud, and if Houston has 35 points, no one can catch you because they probably just got all.
I'll tell you, I think this game is a stay away for me. Personally, I get why people are playing it. I think it's going to be one of the highest owned games to kind of target. I think a lot of people are going to expect points. You mentioned Houston's offense just being – they got a bunch of new weapons. Like people think Joe Mixon's going to come in and improve that running game. CJ with another year under his belt will feel more comfortable in that offense. But then – you have the Colts that have Jonathan Taylor. That's an easy bring back for a running back position. He's also
extremely expensive and the highest priced running back.
He is.
Like now, if you start thinking about it, like, that's the thing. That's where I extrapolate the stack. Okay, what's the primary stack? Who would be my most likely secondary stack? Like with Houston, it's Nico, which makes it a high price stack for the double stack. On some other teams, that might be a cheap tight end, or even the running back himself. Or a cheap wide receiver is the double stack. For Indy, if you went Richardson's Pittman, that's fine. If you then add downs to it, you have a value stack. Looking at it right now, I think Jacksonville in Miami, which should be a high-paced game in my opinion. That's the kind of stuff. That's the game I'm looking at right now. As I look at the stacks week one, Kirk, I think Lawrence at low 6K, and then you add either Kirk or Ingram, who are both 5,500. They don't really know who's supposed to be the starter. And then they left Gabe Davis at 45. If you assume Gabe Davis is the number two, you could play Kirk, Davis, Lawrence, and barely spend 15,000
and still bring back with a Tyreek.
Exactly. You could easily have the high price bring back.
But I
easily have A-Chain as the bring back. Any of that.
I like an even better that same division. I think a nice stack is going to be in Tennessee, where you have a cheap Levis who's going to be somebody trying to take shots downfield, along with now Calvin Ridley being wide receiver number one because Hopkins probably will not be playing. And then
which gives Tyler Boyd
another
$2,500 value.
So
that gives you now a double stack here, and you could bring back with one of your favorite Chicago guys.
And it becomes a bit of a bit because of our best ball experience from last year. But Treylon Burks has been getting that was instantaneously.
There's no way I ever play Treylon Burks, Logan.
No, I didn't think so. But I'm saying that's the beat report on the ground was as soon as the Hopkins injury went, they're like, oh, Treylon Burks, 17th round best ball.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Just looking at it now like that, you see Lawrence is a little more expensive than Caleb Williams, which makes sense to you. But in the concept of fantasy, I look at the stack, and then you well, with Caleb, I have to play 2 high 6K wide receivers with him. Or I have to play like I probably am not thinking about Cole Kmet. I'm thinking about Keenan or DJ Moore, or I have to play the rookie with Odunze.
I like Rome.
Make it a double stack.
Yeah.
Which is way more expensive than putting Kirk or Gabe or Ingram with Lawrence.
But before we keep moving too far forward, I will say that if there is an opportunity to put him in the lineup, I will take a shot on a DeAndre Hopkins for being ready for week 1 because let's be honest. I mean, I hate to sound shitty about this, but Hopkins kind of does have a history of faking injuries to get out of practice. I think he'll be ready for week 1 if that's another.
Yeah, I'm not. Again, I'm not like I did take Ridley in this draft. I just did my last best ball draft, but like I 100% expect Hopkins to play pretty much the whole season.
And
maybe he misses week 1 if it's a really bad tweak, but like I agree, he should be back to practice before the end.
But even if I have to play Hopkins with him, I'm fine with that.
See, but Gov, this is why I think the Houston stack will be popular because you got guys like Mitchell. Like whenever you got a rookie that's underpriced that's getting a lot of buzz, I just feel like it's an easy bring back. Now maybe it doesn't work and we can leverage against it, but that's just one of my examples. Like you got Downs who's cheap as well.
Let's just be honest. The AFC South is just a great team to play week 1 for some reason.
See, and I don't the cheap random wide receiver isn't going to be like. That's not going to make Houston, like, honestly, I don't think Houston's going to be popular. But I think Houston against Indy could be a good game.
Yeah, maybe.
And looking at it, it's going to be an expensive stack from the Houston side.
Well, I will say this.
But the Indy side isn't that, like, you're right. The Indy side, really, outside of Taylor, is not going to be that expensive.
It's not going to be
like
that expensive.
Downs, you're right. Downs, Mitchell, even Pittman is not horribly expensive.
Well, even
like, he's there with Keenan and DJ Moore, but like that's still the 6K range.
Yeah, even Donnie took a chance on their tight end situation in best ball, so that tells you like not that we would do that in a DFS lineup, but what people are thinking in that kind of mindset of like, oh, I can get cheap options on this team that might score a lot of points.
Yeah, we know that week 1 we're going to have an influx of people who don't know what they're doing playing. Mm-hmm. I do think that leads to the sexy names of Stroud and all that getting played up slightly more, but I don't know if it's going to affect.
That's what's going to make Houston stacks popular.
Yes.
Everyone wanting to play Stroud, Diggs, and then whatever else.
If Diggs
maybe they do the double. Maybe you get idiots who in DFS don't know what they're doing and like, no, I wouldn't full game stack and go Stroud, Nico, Diggs, Schultz. No.
Well, this might be the cheapest we ever see Diggs in this season.
I do think that if he has a good game week 1, he will be more expensive than Nico the whole season.
Yeah,
like,
he'll probably stay 73 the whole season.
He's not the most expensive receiver for Houston.
That's actually a good question, and it allows me to circle back to Evan's point because I think it was a good one. Is sometimes we're so like hot stove ready to make a hot take on a camp news kind of blurb, right? Like, oh, Hopkins was hurt, or this happened, or they got me with Geno Smith. I'm like, oh, I think he's going to be done for his career. Like he went, and so we see these like reports, and we're so quick to like instantaneously have a reaction. You are right, Evan. Hopkins could just be the veteran, be like, you know what, I might be ready. I'm going to try to be ready, but I don't want to practice. Like 10 plus years in the league, I don't want to have to grind it, and who would blame him?
Yeah.
So,
well, from what I'm reading so far about Hopkins, it's his left knee that was taped up at practice yesterday, which is the opposite of it. He had his right MCL in 2021 that required surgery. This is not the same knee. So I don't know.
And even if it was, but what I'm saying is like veterans are going to just like, they can get up and go when it's time. If it's time,
Buffalo
prices are weird.
No. Buffalo has no skill players. Like their highest priced skill player would be Cook and Kincaid.
Speaking of the skill players for Buffalo, are you guys willing to stick in Keon Coleman at his price?
No,
I think a lot of people.
I think I'm playing 3,700 MVS.
I think I would consider that as well. Like,
no, I would not.
No.
But
I feel like you guys are playing that. No. I get it.
Again,
listen, camp injuries are going to happen, and there's a good shot that it's going to happen to the Buffalo receiving room. MVS will be on the team, and I could imagine him being number 2 option.
I also reserve the right to walk back the stupid shit I say at the beginning of August. All right?
No.
Because from what I'm reading so far about MVS at the training camp so far, it's not going well for him.
Is it really that bad?
Yeah, he's losing first team reps.
I can walk.
Well, who's taking them?
Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakur.
Shakir.
Curtis
Claypool
Samuel.
was getting some, but I think he's hurt. He's got a hamstring issue. No, toe injury, sorry.
I would play Shakir a lot.
Yeah, I like Khalil Shakur, even though he's not a sexy option. He's got some talent that he's not going to make up for Diggs, but if you don't want to play a rookie in Keon Coleman, I like Shakir.
Also, I do want to point out with Hollins, I'll never play him even if he has value due to how he showed up to training camp this year with no shoes on, just dogs out walking onto the field. That's despicable. You're disgusting.
I liked Mac Hollins in Atlanta, but he's going to be buried on that depth chart. I don't think he's going to be a reasonable fantasy option.
Wow.
Is that Zay Jones on?
That is Zay Jones, number 2 price wide receiver for Arizona.
No,
I like Zay Jones, but I don't know.
4,600. So not exactly expensive, Zay Jones.
I would take Greg Dortch over Zay Jones any day.
Michael Wilson.
Yeah, I would go Michael Wilson before any of those two.
Well, that's true too. I'm just saying I would pick Dortch over Zay Jones with all the healthy.
How about we just play the best guy who's probably still underpriced in McBride?
Yeah.
McBride.
I think there's better tight ends that you can get for a lot cheaper, though.
Yeah.
Not better.
But that might not be a good thought. Like, maybe McBride has this monster game because, like, Kyler's going to check it down and Marvin Harrison's not going to be open as a rookie game 1.
I'm willing to be wrong on that, though. I'm fine with missing out on McBride hype.
Are we saying McBride is too cheap for what he is? Because he is the most expensive tight end this week.
He's the most expensive tight end, but he isn't like. There's a lot of tight ends missing on this list.
Yeah, if it were a full slate, Kelsey would be more expensive. I would expect Andrews to be more expensive, but I kind of think Andrews might need a prove-it season after coming off injury, as much as I hate to say it, to make sure that he's not, like, gone and they need to just go with likely.
And there's no Kittle. His price makes sense to me for where he's at, but I feel like if I'm not getting value on a slate of value, which might be the wrong way of thinking. Like Evan Ingram, I think, just gets more targets in a higher potential scoring game.
Well, I did want to clarify. I wasn't like that's why I said it the way I did. I'm not saying that he is a great price for a tight end. But I do think he is a great price for a wide receiver. If you viewed him as the number 1 target getter for that team, they got the for sure thing. If you were going to play, like, for example, if you're playing Kyler Murray, I think you play McBride. I don't think there's
Yeah, I agree. If you took tight end off of McBride,
right.
I would say it would just be like if you took tight end off of him and he was just a wide receiver, I would put him 7K. Like, I would put him closer to Marvin Harrison's price.
My thing is,
he's getting $1,000 discount off of Marvin Harrison's price because he's a tight end.
But Evan made a point.
Otherwise, it would probably be as close as Nico and Diggs are. 7K to 67. Like,
I don't
he
think
should
this
probably be 67 if Marvin Harrison's 72.
I don't think this is a good point, though, being that McBride plays tight end and the salaries are going to reflect upon the positions they play. It's not really a smart. It's not a relevant idea to compare McBride to wide receivers just because he catches the football. He plays tight end.
That's true. He is running different routes. He's playing a different, like, sort of game. But, like, he still gets, like, I look at the numbers and it's like he's still getting targets. Those targets are different and can, like, I'll admit, there are going to be games where the wide receiver targets are 3 to 5. And not many deep ones. There's going to be games where he gets like a 20-yarder over the middle of the field and breaks it.
No,
that's open on the play action.
I just want to point out this as well. With McBride, I know he's talented, but I don't know if Buffalo can even push Arizona to need to score like that. That's my question about that game. I don't know if I want that game because I don't know where Buffalo is. And if I don't know where a whole team is going to be, then I'm out.
Arizona's defense is going to be ass on paper, and I will absolutely expect Buffalo to. If they don't have a 3-score lead by halftime or maybe the third quarter, I would be.
Arizona's better than you think.
I don't agree with that.
I don't know about that either. Like
Arizona has a decent offense, but their defense is ass.
Yeah, but you got to think about it in the. Do we think
I
Buffalo's
think
a Super Bowl
I
type
honestly
team
think
still
it's
where they can
more- I
blow out
think it is-
everybody?
Looking at this game, I think it's more likely Buffalo looks like they're going to be stolid offensively after this first game than Arizona looks like their defense can keep them in games that they can win.
And
Like maybe this is an offensive shootout or something, but like I do think like Arizona's defense is going to be bad enough that the limited offense Buffalo has should put them up.
but this is why
I think this could be Buffalo's best offensive game of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, to answer Donnie's question, no, I definitely don't think the Buffalo Bills are Super Bowl contenders on paper, but I am not going to count out Josh Allen, and Joe Brady is not the worst offensive coordinator you can ask for.
But you need talent around you eventually. At some point, talent needs to be there.
This is their talentless year. Like
Yeah.
Kansas City just had a talentless year where it's like, what's your best thing? Old Kelsey and rookie Rice? Like that's what you
but-
got?
We don't even think they have a rookie Rice, and they definitely don't have an old Kelsey.
So, Gov, I got to kick this back to you because Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the Panthers between 2020 and 2021. What did you think of the offense during those seasons?
I thought Matt Rule didn't let Joe Brady do shit.
Shit.
That's true.
Well,
So I'm not sure if we know what Joe Brady wants to do.
my
I know what
question is
Matt
moot
Rule
then.
wanted to. I know what Matt Rule wanted to do, and Matt Rule got fired after that. So I
Fuck
can
my
give you
question.
that. Well, it's the best answer I can give you because, like, Joe Brady said if I remember right, Joe Brady wanted to get back to he wanted to keep playing like the run the ball defense, but Matt Rule wanted to open it up, which is why we traded for Sam Darnold, which is why we took shots on quarterbacks.
Dan Arnold.
No.
I forgot about that.
Ian Thomas.
The Darnold to Arnold connection. I forgot about that.
Yeah, the Darnold to Arnold. Yeah. So he was trying to build. Rule traded to try to build the team he wanted, and I don't think Joe Brady ever really got the chance. And there was a mutiny from inside, which is why the owner had to get rid of Matt Rule after those years. So I would say don't put too much stock into what you saw with Joe Brady in Carolina onto what he might do. I will say Buffalo has, for the last 10 years, has had a record of taking good talent from my Carolina Panthers organization. So they've been doing it since our GM moved there I think right after our Super Bowl run, 2016, 2017, something like that.
I actually have a good
Since then, they have picked up every free agent that we have sort of let go, and they've been very solid for Buffalo.
What were you going to speak of?
Let Logan get in here.
I'm sorry. I meant Logan. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I actually have a good correlation off of that, though. We're talking about offensive coordinators not getting the chance to show what they really are, or maybe they did and we just don't believe it. Like, I look at a guy like Kellen Moore, who was the bell of the ball kind of thing. With Dallas, people thought, he's going to be head coach soon, and then he goes to the Chargers and just looks, terrible.
I don't even know if that was his fault, too.
It might not have been, or maybe he is that bad, and this one's going to be bad too. But what I will say is the Eagles, without him, were the most vanilla offense you can imagine. They ran very little motion.
Screens.
They just did not have creativity. And Kellen Moore is known for at least having motion and creativity and getting players the ball. So I do think there is something to be said for that. When you do see a kind of a lackluster offense, you got to ask yourself, do you think it's a talent void like Buffalo? I think Buffalo is a clear team we just talked about, just doesn't have very much. And they're relying a lot on rookies, and you got to prove it to me moments. And I don't know how much you're going to see out of that. Versus like the Eagles or the Panthers, they might have more talent than we're admitting to, and they were just used incorrectly.
Yeah, I do think Kellen Moore's offenses require a certain level of run game more than most offenses, and he just had none of it last year.
Which you could argue with Barkley and the weapons. With the weapons he has now, he has the most talented, personnel on paper he's ever had.
Yeah, that's arguable. Maybe a worse O-line than what he had in Dallas, but there's a lot of talent in that room. And Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback he's probably ever had when it comes to ability to be creative.
See, and I like this type of show because we're talking about skill players and we're all bringing different skills to the table. So that's why we're all over the place because what are we going to do at this point in DFS breakdown? Are we going to just go team by team and make this like grandstand point on each team when everything's going to change anyways? Or are we just going to talk about our favorite, things that stick out to us? So speaking of which, Gov, is there any other like standout skill players? Any other kind of like you want to touch on this topic? It could just be like a guy you think's overpriced, a guy you think underpriced. Anything you want people to be aware of when they look at skill positions?
Yeah, just let me lament the fact I didn't play Blake Snell tonight with his 9 innings, 11 strikeouts, 3 walks, no hitter.
You dare disrespect the former Cy Young winner?
I dare disrespected him in Cincinnati. I didn't expect a no hitter. Like no hitter shutout, like complete game. Wow, Snell. Wow, San Fran. Like,
I actually do have a good question though.
Woo! Okay, so yeah, get back to football. Well, my horrible decisions in life.
I think we would agree that stacking is valuable. Is it needed? That's where I want to go. Is the stack when you talk about skill players needed? We know it's valuable. Is it needed?
I mean, I'd argue the data shows us that it's kind of needed if you want to have a chance at the first spot. But
like if you just look at like the record of winning lineups, almost always, like there's at least a single stack.
Yeah,
with a quarterback. The exceptions to that are the outlier massive gains from like a Lamar, a Cam, a Josh Allen, where it's like, well, if a quarterback gets 2 rushing touchdowns and has 35, then sometimes you just need him and the best value around him. But like that is not the norm, although we know the players that it is possible for. It is a specific type of player. Like Aaron Rodgers is not having that kind of game. If Aaron Rodgers has that kind of game, Garrett Wilson will probably be necessary, or Brees will have caught a ball, a touchdown or 2 and be necessary.
Stacking makes more sense from a week-to-week perspective, where you don't have to live with a season. I mean, you guys call it season long, but in traditional fantasy football, you don't need to stack because you're living with a certain team for 4 months, and stacking is not necessarily in your best interest every fucking week with the same players because teams will lose and teams will not necessarily have
teams are not always in a good matchup. You don't want your entire team based on that for 4 straight months.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this format,
I'm trying to find the 3 or 4 best teams for that each week.
Yes.
Right.
Bingo.
And truly, we're not. Most DFS lineups, you're not looking to win every week. What we're really looking to do is maximize when we are right, and that's why.
When I'm playing the large field GPPs,
right.
It's like, yeah, I'm probably not up at the top every week. It might be 1 week out of the entire season, but if that 1 week I take down the tournament, it will pay for the entire season.
Hopefully, you're going into it trying to win.
I'm going in every week trying to build that top 1 lineup. But I know that if I'm building correctly, I could be anywhere between like first or last, Ricky Bobby. But I also know with my bankroll management, if I win that tournament, I can then play that tournament and everything else I need for the entire season with profit.
So, Gov, if you're going to Ricky Bobby this lineup, how do you shake and bake DFS?
Let's see. Shake and bake. Oh. Well, I think shake and bake. We need to get behind it. We need to draft. Like that's a stack to me. That's just a correlation. That's how I'm shaking and baking. I'm getting my correlation. Now, that correlation isn't always a stack. Like sometimes, like you know me, I love my running back with my defense. There's a correlation I love to jump on. People don't. They sleep on it. It actually is more correlated than people think. your defense is doing well, you're trying to run the ball and keep their score down more, like it does snowball into each other. Like that's another step of what I'll be doing this month that I usually only get like 1 or 2 days to really focus on during a week, is where is my strong correlations? Like, what's the best running back defense? What's the best stack? Do these even fit together with any kind? Like, I'll take all week just like, let me put in the Baltimore stack. Let me put in my favorite running back defense. Does that even leave me salary to work with? Who do I need to adjust? Will that work? Do it with the next stack. Do it with the next defense and running back that I like. Because there's usually 2 or 3 of each on a week.
Logan, Donnie, please tell me you both have seen Talladega Nights.
I love Talladega Nights.
Okay, good. That
I've
reference
seen-
didn't go anybody's head then.
I've seen 10 minutes and ran the opposite way.
But you also have to remember, shaking and bacon is fine because I am known as Mike Honcho.
This is my favorite under the radar, cheap, can open up everything stack.
But why?
No,
But
no,
why?
not against New Orleans defense, especially.
I mean, New
I don't
Orleans
know if
doesn't
New
have a
Orleans-
spectacular defense
Yeah, I don't know
anymore,
if
but
New
they're still
Orleans is-
decent.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I was about to say I'm not super afraid of New Orleans defense.
I'm afraid to play Bryce Young and Sanders week 1 against them, though.
I'm not
No.
looking like you're doing that and literally punting at tight end and quarterback, and then you have a not so expensive bring back. Like, are you then trying to jam in Tyreek and CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what you're gonna do.
Well,
Like, that's how you
not
do
those guys specifically, but I'm jamming in all the superstars.
Yeah.
I'm taking Bijan. I'm taking, that's what I'm doing.
Logan, how many times did you cash last year in NFL?
A lot.
Don't ask those questions. More often than you actually would think.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Logan does have a good percentage on that.
See,
He has
that
made-
was That was
He
why
can
I
make-
asked the question, because Logan's going to build this fucking lineup and he's still going to find a way to cash. Blow my mind.
Exactly. It's big cash because the value's good and he builds right around it. It just doesn't ceiling all the time.
Yeah,
Although he
here's
had a
the-
ceiling lineup in UFL. We saw that this year.
Here's the honest truth: is when I'm wrong, I'm really wrong. But when I'm right, I'm super. Like I played Will Levis his first game of his NFL career and got laughed at. And I knew I'd get laughed. And it wasn't that I should have been right to not get laughed at. It was more like I'm not only am I playing Will Levis, I'm playing him with Hopkins. I'm playing him in a sense that makes sense. So it's like I don't even necessarily say I have to be right, but at least if I'm going to play, Bryce Young and Sanders, I'm going to then jam all these superstars that you can't afford around it.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not going to say laughed at, Logan, but I would say I didn't like it because I'm just not going to play a quarterback without any data that late into the year when I have data on guys I can trust.
Yeah, that's a good point by Donnie. In addition to, Will Levis was playing under a different Titans system last year, led by Mike Vrabel, where now it's Callahan coaching this team, and now we really don't know what this offense is going to look like.
Well, that's
Not only was it a different coach, it was clear that whole last year was built around Derrick Henry's to-go year, farewell year.
Yes.
Well, that's why I liked it because I saw the talent in him in college and it felt like the offensive coordinator there misused him, but he was still getting I still seen talent. And whenever I feel like an offensive coordinator is misusing you, and I see talent, you go to the next level and you're playing with players that have more skills and more abilities. That's when you get my attention. Don, you mentioned something in the last show, and I actually made a short out of it, that Stidham is the most expensive Denver Bronco quarterback. All reports say that they're probably going to lean on Bo Nix. I think that's an interesting way to attack too. It's just maybe that you don't need Bo Nix can run a lot, so you don't need to bring back stuff. But I do think noticing things like this in the DK pricing is interesting. Is there any stacks that you want to stay away from? Any stacks that you just think is not a good idea at this point?
Bryce Young and Sanders.
I It gives me a lot of confidence because it tells me I'm doing the right thing.
If we're gonna play anybody from Denver at quarterback, it ain't gonna be Stidham. There's no way Nix is being benched week 1 unless something catastrophic happens. He's doing very well at training camp so far.
He's and I think it would take Sean Payton. It would take something that Sean Payton really doesn't want to see for him to bench him. Like Sean Payton wants.
I mean, okay, I'm not playing Sam Darnold, but if JJ is starting, I'd consider him and Jefferson as a stack.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say though, I do like about this slate.
And
There's
I think
all these interesting.
Addison might be one of my favorite mid-price wide receivers. I'll say
all the interesting top teams aren't around. Like Philly's not here. You don't have Kansas
They're
City.
all on island games.
Yeah, it's great.
This is
I
weird,
love it.
Like week 1 is always a little weird because a lot of good teams are on island games, and they'll be peppered in on Sundays throughout the rest of the season as teams like Pittsburgh and Carolina and Atlanta and Vegas get their.
So why don't you give people
games?
Why don't you give people the early look though? Like, what's the under the radar stack or bring back? It doesn't even got to be like a wide receiver quarterback. Any under the radar kind of correlations that you want to talk about?
No, I
love this right here for a double, and I honestly don't care whether you go Hill, A-Chain, Waddle as like the bring back. Whatever you need to fit. If you got 8K and you can fit Hill, I don't mind doing that. Like you still have 4,800. It's a little tough at running back there. You're probably going to need another little. Like you still get even. Let's see. What's the most expensive defense? Cowboys at 39. So you're still going to save money, even with the Cowboys at 39. Like 5K for 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers is entirely doable.
So let's rapid fire some of these.
That one could work good. Another one I like.
I don't, to be honest.
It doesn't even got to be cheap. Just any under the radar guys that you think. Bo Nix was a good call out by you. So would you play Bo Nix?
Well, yeah. So speaking of which, Denver is playing Seattle. They have a good defense, but I mean, I don't think it's anything spectacular. But yeah, I would absolutely play Bo Nix with Cortland Sutton
because there would be some value there. Like you could.
This is one I look at. Like, how does this play out? You look at the prices for the Chargers wide receivers. Are they completely wrong?
I will play some version of that.
Is Quentin Johnston should be the 3rd price wide receiver?
I disagree.
Can you even play McConkey and Palmer if they're the most expensive wide receivers for the team?
I can understand why Reynolds is priced higher than Quentin Johnston because Johnston doesn't have Butterfingers at practice. Oh, and Reynolds doesn't compare to Johnston. Johnston's training camp is looking fucking terrible so far, so I can see why when they were priced, Reynolds is a little bit higher. He's probably going to have more dependable hands.
See, and I think Shark is going to be underrated because he's the old vet on the team for wide receiver technically.
I'm surprised he's working with the first team.
This week he's.
I'm not that's the thing Harbaugh's going to do. He's going to have his old vet wide receiver, and then one of Quentin Johnston or Palmer or McConkey is going to be on the other side.
I'm glad you brought that up, Evan. He is running with the first team this week. I was about to mention that too at the end of the show.
He's projected to be the number 4 receiver for the Chargers, and that does not give me confidence to play him.
He's quote unquote turning heads.
And this is based off the projections. But if you told me before training camp that the top 2 wide receivers for the Chargers are Palmer and McConkey, I would tell you you're crazy. They're going to use Quentin Johnston, and they're going to have the old veteran who's going to work his way on the field in Shark. So, preseason might show that there's a huge value gap here. And, then whether you want to play Herbert against Vegas or like I have set up, McConnell, Adams, and one of these guys on the other side, it's still totally fine.
I think Donnie talked about it at the end of last year, though, with J.K. Dobbins. If you really thought he was going to play week 1, he's really cheap.
Yeah, him and Gus Bus are very cheap altogether. So if you have really hear something good news, or if one of them gets hurt in this upcoming preseason, there is a very good chance of a great value play.
Just a talent tree guy that you like, Donnie. Would you target any kind of fun stacks that you're thinking about already?
No, I mean, the only thing I think right now for me that's going to be probably a shoe-in, and I'm going to probably say it continuously through week one, I have to play Tyreek. I mean, I'm fine being wrong on it, but I have to get on it. He's going to end up
just one off him, or are you going to play him with two?
I'll probably put Tua in with him. And then I love Evan Ingram. I think he's a great play with it.
I'll be honest, I'm not. You guys probably know this. I mean,
that's probably my go-to stack.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good point though, because I don't think we played. I don't remember playing Tua at any point last year. I know I'm not a big.
I don't either.
But I like him though. Like that's what's weird is I like his talent, but I just don't ever usually click him. He's usually in a range that I don't get down with. I will say I'm very intrigued by his weight loss. Like
he did drop the weight for a rushing upside.
And I think I mentioned it in a couple of pods ago, but like I really like it when a player says like not only did I lose weight, but I did it for this purpose. Like Joker did that with Denver, and everyone's like, oh, I don't know. Like no, sometimes when someone says something, they say it with such a purpose and drive that it piques my interest. It definitely would intrigue me. What's one stack that you guys think is a terrible idea? Like a casual's just going to love it. He's going to say like, oh, this is my favorite tout said this is a good
full Houston. Full Chicago, full Houston. Any of these new guys that need time to learn with each other?
Are you saying any Houston? So like you're saying CJ Stroud, Diggs, CJ Stroud, Nico, they're all back?
I could easily see a world where Stroud's just trying to force it to Diggs' first game, try and build that repertoire, and maybe it will work and it ceilings out, but I don't want any part of that.
I actually agree with you, but I thought I was on an island.
No, I mean, I might do Diggs as a one-off, but I wouldn't play the full stack.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do too if I was going to.
Yeah, because the Colts are going to come out swinging because this is an NFC South rival, AFC South rival, and even then, like I mean, I still have Houston winning this game, but I wouldn't mind playing a small Houston stack.
Yeah, that's the furthest I'd bring it. The way Logan has it right now, I wouldn't even play Pittman. I don't think with it. I'd probably play a Downs with that, but I don't think there's a world where I play Stroud. There's too much value at quarterback right now, and there's a lot of pressure for that offense to perform, and it might not have to perform.
See, I would leverage it because I think that the Texans' defense is really good. I like what they've done.
I love the Texans' defense.
Yeah, Stingley the corner is going under appreciated because of his injury history early in his career.
They lost a D lineman as well, the suspension, who was going to be a pretty good rotational guy for them in Autry.
True.
I would give you to touch Pittsburgh. Like right now, it's like I don't care if they tell me Justin Fields is starting. I'm not going Fields pick-ins. I'm not playing prior moves.
So
I don't want any part of Najee or Jalen Warren until you show me what you're going to actually do with it. Arthur Smith, no.
That's true.
Just
Dude,
no.
I can't wait till Patterson gets all the work in the backfield.
That's a good point.
I'm not really limiting much right now, again, because we're looking at it high, so I'm trying to keep everything in scope. But I'm still saying no to Pittsburgh.
If it's not Cordero Patterson, it's me, Cole Pruitt, tight end.
No, I could see them just going with the best athlete they got in Washington if he's still makes the team.
Apparently, he's turning heads in training camp, but who's not going to say things like that about an athlete at this point, Donnie? So that's also annoying too. Is like, of course, any athlete on your team is going to, turn heads in training camp.
I'm not.
There's an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't like playing rookie quarterbacks like just DFS wise week one because
it's against the Giants.
I would just play Aaron Jones and say they're going to blow him out.
That's a good point.
That's valid. That's valid. Like as much as you could do that.
This is not a game script I like in general.
What's Addison's price, by the way? Because
it's low. It's very low.
I'd be tempted.
It's cheap.
53.
People will be afraid of it. People will laugh, but all you need is a couple guys to be off of him because of the off-field stuff.
If Hawk is out, Addison value skyrockets to me.
But if Hawkinson plays, he's also a tremendous value. I mean,
it's worth a 5,300 risk.
Yeah. Gov, what's the stack that everyone's going to play? Or like the names will be popular, but you think the bad? Oh, you already mentioned it with the Steelers. What about you, Evan?
Now the other side, this I might have. this I might play as a core.
I could absolutely see the Falcons beating the Steelers, and this would be a good idea.
But hear me out. I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm playing Atlanta, I might just want to stick in Pitts and say Kirk Cousins is going to show us what Pitts is made of.
I like a Kirk Cousins Pitts stack. It's cheap. It's reasonable.
I like
You could even throw London in there and make.
I don't even need to play Kirk with it. I might just have Pitts as a one-off.
I think I attack this game with Bijan and the defense, though. I really do.
There's plenty of ways to attack this game, but I love the game.
Thinking like this is more like a coaching thought. It's like, okay, I know what Arthur Smith was doing last year, and I'm pretty sure I know what this new coaching staff needs and wants to do with this team. I got a feeling they're going to feature Bijan, and they're going to try to be tough.
Yeah. I would probably split the difference with both of you. I think I might play some Pitts and Robinson.
Well, I do think they are going to emphasize week one. We need to, first of all, you don't want to overstress Kirk in the new system against Pittsburgh, who has a good pass rush, which to me feels like we're going to just try and get our guys who need a confidence boost, because Kyle Pitts needs a confidence boost. And I don't think Bijan Robinson necessarily needs one, but just the calm sense of mind of saying this is not what last year was.
And let's not pretend like no matter what happens this year, this offense is a lot more fantasy friendly than they have ever been. Like, it doesn't matter the format. Even Evan, who's a dynasty guy, can tell you that like people in fantasy they were so sick of Arthur Smith.
Yeah, and that was exactly what I was going to say too. Is that the talent was there last year and the year before? It's just that Arthur Smith was fucking up the team.
Yeah,
so
I feel like Pittsburgh is such an Arthur Smith place to coach.
yeah, and that's why I don't have much confidence in that offense off the bat. I think they're going to need a few weeks to figure it out because Arthur is not going to make any sense with the way he utilizes the talent, and we have to see who's even starting a quarterback too. So we have to wait on that.
I mentioned the cheap stack I like with Young and Sanders, and that was like if you wanted to jam in all the studs. I will mention a high price one. I like Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert. I think a lot of people will try to get cute with.
Well, they're not on the slate.
Are they not on the slate?
Well, for the island slate, yeah. If it's an island slate, I would agree with that because a lot of people like to disrespect Jalen Hurts for not being a good enough quarterback. Where he's got amazing targets and people sleep on him for some reason.
I'm not a big Jalen Hurts as a great passer. I think he's a little overrated as a passer, but he doesn't need to be a passer, honestly.
But an overrated one that you guys haven't mentioned yet, and I'm shocked because this is more of a price thing, and just like DK already pricing in the upside, and I just don't think there's much upside in it. It's Josh Allen with Kincaid. I would stay away from that.
Why?
Because Josh Allen's real expensive. There's no Mahomes, there's no Allen. I think the ownership's going to be way too high, and then everyone's going to be like, well, Kincaid's not the most highest priced tight end, so then I'm getting somewhat of a value. I think it's a bit of fool's gold.
Yeah, well, I just play Cook in this game. I wouldn't touch the
Yeah, so Donnie's point, this could very well be a game script that this is like the Minnesota-New York Giants game where Buffalo's just blowing out Arizona, and they just give the running backs the carries to finish off the second half.
I would play Cook. I do like Cook.
I'm fine with a Josh Allen Kincaid stack, even if it's chalky, because if you can balance it out with the other not chalky players, I think it's still a good connection because who the fuck else is going to be the number one target? I think Kincaid's the number one target now.
I just don't see this game as high scoring, honestly.
Sure, I'm not even saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying like this is one that makes me uncomfortable because of the price, because there's already so much expected of those two guys, and I just don't see much leverage in it. Because then you're playing that Cardinals game to score points. Because like if your quarterback and pass catcher are scoring points, you have to think somebody in the Cardinals is bringing back,
And I do think the red zone offense is going to be a struggle for Buffalo this year, just where you have Lackatown and people are just going to focus on Cook. Yeah. So are we going to get more gadget plays and trying to see Curtis Samuel and he gets into the end zone like 2 times on a gadget play? I'm just not a fan of this offense.
I will tell you, Curtis Samuel's been very consistent wherever he plays when he's not injured.
It's true.
Right. That's my thing. I don't know if Buffalo is going to just say, we're giving it to our best guy in Cook and Kincaid, in trying to score that way, or if they're going to have to be more creative to score.
We are seeing more offenses be, creative. The Kansas City Chiefs mentioned that Tony's going to play strictly running back. Curtis.
Well, we debunked that, Logan, the other night. We debunked a lot of that.
All I'm saying is, like, people are going to believe in this, like, gadgety stuff, no matter if it happens or not. Like, people want to believe in it. They want it to be a thing. Like, people want Curtis to get a ton of, like, running back kind of swing passes in Buffalo.
But Buffalo said they were going to use him as a running back. Kansas City never said anything about Tony being a running back. That was just a random report trying to bring hype.
They were giving him reps at that to see what else they can do for the offense. Because, I mean, let's be honest, there's not a lot of great depth behind Pacheco right now. And if Kadarius Toney ends up taking some jet sweeps or just other stuff that doesn't require throwing him the football, okay, is that going to be fantasy relevant? Who the fuck knows?
And I'm glad that Donnie called me out because it was more of a theory play of just, like, stay away from all that gadget talk, though. Play the guys that you consistently know. Gov mentioned earlier. Play, Adams and the cheap quarterback. Like, we know Adams is getting 11 to 12 targets, or that's what he's done consistently. Play at Diggs.
Samuel has potential of being a gadget guy, but he also is just going to be a wide receiver that's going to play for Buffalo.
Yeah.
But in the red zone, I do think Buffalo is going to need to get different. They're not going to just be able to say, here you go, Cook, every single game.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Like, they're not going to be able to be one-dimensional like that. But, like, I do think Josh Allen is talented enough to, like, keep them afloat for the year. Mm-hmm. I don't, like, again, I'm with all you. I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team, but they're going to be oddly competitive.
Yeah, well, we talked about it on our show earlier with the scheduling. I think having Allen play every game of the season automatically shoes you in for at least 7 wins.
Did you?
It's hard for me to say that that's not true. Like, I've seen the kind of offense they're going to run. But, like, this is definitely going to be their down year, and Buffalo is going to be tough. But like, a week 1 game against Arizona is going to make people not think that. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, they're going to
they can win
fine against Arizona, and they're going to be like, well, Buffalo still looks good. But then when they end up having to go to, like, hell, even their first game against the Jets will probably be tough.
Well, the Jets are hard to score on as it is, and when you void a talent, man, that's rough.
Can you do me a favor, group? Because I haven't looked at it. Can you look at the Jets wide receiver? I think they're on the slate, right? Can you look at Corley's price?
Jets are not on the slate. They're Monday night.
They're Monday night, and they want Aaron Rodgers to get hurt on primetime again.
Well, the rookie Corley has been getting a lot of buzz, so maybe that's a captain kind of under the radar. I don't know if
that's more like the $200 value guy.
I will say, about the one stack. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to get in early on the Burrow stack. Christian Gonzalez, when we saw him play last year, was locking down almost every number 1 receiver. He is going to be a tough matchup on Chase. Don't force that.
Yeah. Let me just clarify quickly. I was saying the captain like slates. I'm not saying the captain Corley. That's obviously not smart. Gov was right to call me out there. I'm not saying play. I'm saying he opens it up for a captain for that kind of format. Is there anything else we should mention before we get out of here?
No, I think we've done a good job. Like, we don't want to get too far into it.
Right.
There's still a lot we don't know right now, and it's just hard to come up with more stuff to talk about.
That's really where we're at. Like, there's not much else. Like, I know the stacks I want to attack, but now I need preseason info to see how these teams actually come out. Like, I might be more willing to play Chargers if the wide receiver room flips the right way.
Speaking of rooms, I really did like the idea that I had with the Discord of giving you guys a sandbox and saying, like, here's Donnie's ideas for the week. Here's Gov's ideas for the week. Maybe Donnie was like, I don't know how much I'll use it. Maybe I don't use it all, but that's revealing. Like, mine, I might have a bunch of scatterbrained ideas in there, and then you open up Donnie's and he has like one message. And then so you guys see the inner workings of what we're dealing with. And that's all I'm trying to do with this podcast is just give you the honest, real evaluations of what we feel week to week and then present it on screen because I don't think enough podcasts do that. And so that's always been my goal. With that being said, though, you can tell we're excited for DFS, for NFL. I think it's going to be a good season, and hopefully we win some more. But until then, we'll have plenty of shows. I think what do you want to talk about next? You want to talk about tight ends, or do you want to merge some different topics? We'll come up with something for sure.
Yeah, we will.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty to talk about. Like it's
Good night,
just
guys.
getting started. Please.
Not everyone.
Peace out.
Have a good night, everybody.